हाँ
Just yeah. So we'll yeah. So now the today's topic is every hyperactive kid and ADHD and how to differentiate it. Now this is one of the very important concerns and a very important topic of concern for everybody, that is a hyperactive kid or every hyperactive kid which is on the spectrum or may not be on the spectrum is ADHD or not, and how to differentiate it, that whether this hyperactivity is actually a true ADHD or it's a part and parcel of autism or maybe sensory or etc and etc. So here we'll be discussing more in terms of an association with autism, because in autism we do get a lot of children who are hyperactive. So now how to differentiate that subset of children who are on the spectrum, whether they are actually a true ADHD or it is just an hyperactivity which is associated due to various other parameters, that we'll see. And then how to differentiate it, that is it as a part of a spectrum or it is actually an another association of autism with ADHD. So here we'll be discussing basically two diagnoses. Is a child on autism with ADHD, or is it a child with autism with hyperactivity due to autism spectrum issues? So this is our main thing that we'll be discussing here. Just a minute, my slide is Yeah. So here, rather than being a lecture or I'll be describing in a one-way manner, it will be more of a two-way communication. So I will request parents to also participate, because we'll be discussing through a practical scenarios. In most of the parents must have seen these scenarios with their kids or in their day-to-day life. So we'll be approaching how we can deal with these practical scenarios, and actually does the child lie on the spectrum or not, or it is on an ADHD or not. So coming to our first practical scenario, I request all the participants to actively participate, because there is no such that I'll be just discussing. We'll be discussing later. It will be a practical scenarios for each of us. So, and I will request parents to respond to the queries one by one. It should not be haphazard. So our first practical case scenario is a 4-year-old child who is in a vocal stage of vocalization with only sounds like ma, pa, ta, and running most of the times in the house, mostly on the floors, and does this more frequently when he is hearing some sounds like washing machine, pressure cooker. And mother also complains that when he makes him to study, he easily gets distracted if some background noise of TV is coming. He likes to do things what he wants, but when mother or teacher wants to teach him something new, he starts throwing things and screaming. This happens more often with other family members and his elder cousin who is 19-year-old child. So I request that what could be the practical scenarios and what could be the possible scenarios in this case. So the first important thing is here what we see is a 4-year-old child. He's in a stage of vocalization. So just only sounds are there like ma, pa, and etc. And other now he's running most of the times in the house. And mostly he does this frequently when he is hearing some background sounds like washing machine or pressure cooker, what the mother tells. But rest of the times probably he's much comfortable. He's not running most of the times, but it is more often when he hears those unusual sounds, which is unusual to him, but not to the natural environment or in the natural environment. And often he also gets distracted when there is a TV sound is coming. And he also notices that when he's made him to study to do something new, he gets easily fidgeted. He wants to don't want to do that work, but he is comfortable in doing something which has been taught to him. And when he's younger, this does make sure that this doesn't happen when the mother is teaching the child. It happens with other family members and its elder cousin who is 19-year-old child. So my question is, what could be the possible scenarios in this case? And I request any of the parent to please participate and give their thoughts on this, because these are just practical things which every parent, me or professional or as a parent, we face.
Yeah, actually, we are facing myself, sir, Vijay, and
Yes, sir.
parent of Danish. He's a 4 years old right now.
Yes, sir.
And what is exactly the case that you have presented? It's almost he'll be doing it's a
Hmm.
90% case. But even
Hmm.
without a TV or washing machine or any sounds,
Hmm.
he'll be continuously running it. Even
Hmm.
without the any sounds, also he'll be start running continuously.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
even we used to see him throwing some objects, and with that sounds
Hmm.
he'll feel happy, and always he wants to do the same activity.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
That's we have seen in our child section.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Any other parent who wants to make some comment or wants to tell something about this? What is this child and what's is happening to him? What could be the possible thing in this? Okay, I'll tell. So the thing is that first of all, most important thing, he's a 4-year-old child, and he is in a stage of vocalization. Means to say, he's just on the stage of sounds like ma, pa, etc. Probably he's also not that much expressive. Need-based language, forget about the language. Need-based speech is also not there, and he easily gets distracted with particular sounds like washing machine, etc., which has been mentioned, even with the TV. And he likes to do things what he wants, as he have mentioned. So the thing is that he doesn't want to do things where the extra effort has to be put or where the brain has to use the processing to get things registered. And another thing which is telling, the mother complains that he often does this with other family members. Probably with the mother he is comfortable. So one thing is clear in this, that he is more of an attention seeking child. Now attention seeking, because he's not doing with every family member, he's doing only with the particular family members. So with other family members, probably they are lenient to him, or he is not, he can do the things, he can escape the behavior. But when the mother is trying to do something, he he is always there. He doesn't show that behavior because he knows that if the mother is there, he cannot do an escape behavior or what we call as an avoidance behavior. Now other thing which is happening is now tactile sensory issues. Now these are the possible scenarios which I have kept. It could be tactile sensory issues, it could be proprioceptive sensory issues, it could be vestibular sensory issues, attention seeking, escape, auditory, frustration, or hyperactive. So these are the possible scenarios which I have made. So out of these, what we can think, what the child is having here. So first of all, one thing is very clear, that the child is having an escape behavior, or what we call as an attention seeking behavior. Escape behavior, why? Because when his somebody family member tries to make him teach something new, he wants to resist it. Either he may start screaming, he may shout, he may run away from there. But if he is doing something which has been taught to him, he will not run away. So definitely ADHD has been ruled out. The thing why? Because if a child is an ADHD child, he will do that thing in every scenario, whether it is a new thing, whether it is an old thing. So there is nothing new, that something new has been taught to him, so he will show that behavior. No, ADHD means he will be hyperactive in every scenario. So one thing has to be ruled out from this. Other thing which is most facing is that attention seeking or escape behavior, because the new thing has been taught to him, so he starts showing some mischief behavior, throw his things, scream and shout. Other thing which is happening is probably the child is running here and there, so maybe tactile or proprioceptive sensory issues, because when the child is running here and there, he may be seeking vestibular issue, or he may be seeking tactile, because when we are running on the ground, the child is getting tactile either through the, through the floor. And they have mentioned he especially runs on the floor, so probably he might be having the tactile issues or proprioceptive, or he may be gaining, or he may be sensory, he may be proprioceptive seeking. But that we cannot tell it right now with this. But yes, definitely one attention seeking and escape behavior is definitely there in this child. Now, other thing which is there is important auditory processing disorder, or we can say auditory issues are there. Why? Because when we tell that the child is, if we go to the case again, here they have mentioned that he mostly does more frequently when he is hearing some background noises like washing machine and pressure cooker. Now, what happens when a child is given some command in the background of some music is going on, then the child may not be able to perceive the human voice. Now, human voice runs through a particular frequency which the child is not able to perceive at the behind if some other music, maybe washing machine sound, maybe music, or maybe TV is going on. The child gets distracted. So as a result, mother may have to tell 3 to 4 times in a normal pitch, XYZ, for example, Arun, come here, Arun, come here. He won't listen. And suddenly the mother might shout, Arun, come here. He might respond in spite of the background music is going on. So generally the thing comes कि बच्चा ignorant है, हमारी बात नहीं सुन रहा, उसको थोड़ा गुस्से से करो तो he responds. The thing here is happening is it's auditory processing. Why? Because in the background of the music, the child is not able to perceive the human voice. The human voice, which comes of a particular frequency, gets mixed up with the background noise, and the child is not able to perceive the human voice. As a result, when the mother or the parent or the caregiver shouts, he responds to that. And another thing which is more favoring to this is the child does that behavior specifically when there is some background noise. If there is no background noise, probably he responds better. The reception comes to be better. So in this thing, another thing which can happen is frustration, definitely, because the child is not very much communicative. As we have mentioned, he's only in the stage of vocalization, ma, pa, etc. That may be a definitely a part. But the thing which is highlighted in this practical scenario is, one is auditory processing, which is definitely hampering the child. As a result of this, when something is taught to him in the background of the music, which is very natural, it's generally doesn't happen that some TV is going in background noise in another room and the child is being taught by the mother. This is a usual scenario which happens. The child gets easily distracted, though it may not be for us, but for the child to perceive the human voice, it's not comfortable in the background of that noise. So this is one thing. Attention seeking could be a thing. Vestibular, a part of vestibular, we don't know from that. But yes, definitely tactile, proprioceptive, attention and escape, and most important is auditory processing. So the purpose of this case was that, or the practical scenario was to make you understand and discuss so that we can able to highlight that is it a really hyperactive or what is basically happening in the child. So I have made this all the possibilities. It's not that all the possibilities are present, but these are the possible 4 to 5 things which we have discussed in this. So any doubt, anything you want to discuss on this?
Sir, actually, in my son's case, actually, what happens is he will be more attention deficient, and
Sir, what we'll do, we'll take up the queries at the end.
Okay, fine.
Okay, we'll take up the particular queries at the end. If you have anything related to this, then we can discuss.
Actually, the question is particular to this only.
Yeah,
the 50% of the thing that which you have mentioned, it's a 50% matching it and 50% is missing out of it. So in this case, what will be the scenario? That's what my question is actually.
Basically, you want to know how we have to approach.
Yeah, what is the scenario what will be the approach and what is the scenario it will be?
Yeah,
that's what my question is regarding the same.
So in this case, most important thing is we have to work on the auditory processing disorder. Now that's a totally a different topic. Probably at the end of the session, when you will put up the query, I'll just add something how we can work on this child. So, but the auditory processing is totally a different topic. But so it will be beyond this thing. But yes, at the end of the session, once we complete the this webinar, we'll discuss on that. Okay.
Sure. Thank you.
So
sir, in this scenario, you have one of the possible scenarios hyperactive ADHD, right? Hyperactive can be considered as one of the possible scenario. Is it we completely ruled out?
No, it cannot be hyperactive child. I'll tell you why. Okay.
Yeah.
Now another case scenario is a 7-year, age is very, very important. A 7-year-old verbal child can make 3 to 4 word sentences. He's active he's active in sports. The screen is not visible because of the images. So the 7-year-old verbal child, he can make 3 to 4 word sentences. He's active with good receptive skills and language, and with good sitting tolerance of 1 hour. One is not coming. So with good sitting tolerance of 1 hour with mother, especially with mother, but with teacher. But teacher often complains that the child does not sit in the class. He's studying in first standard. I request parents to kindly mute yourself. So he's running in first class, teaching in first class, studying in first class, running in the class most of the times, touching other children, playing with the electric cables or the projector in the classroom. He's well toilet and potty trained. The teacher tells him to strictly do the work. The teacher says he knows the work, but he wants to do it in a hurry, and as a result, he often makes mistakes. He cannot sit at a stretch of more than 20 minutes in a class. So after his sitting tolerance of 20 minutes is over, again he will start touching children, pushing them, not hitting them, but only thing is that he's touching them. He's playing with the electric cables of the projector, which is there now. It's more of a modernized classrooms. So I have made use of these projectors in my this thing. So touching the cables, electric cables, touching the other children's in his group. And the mother point of view is that he never does such things at the home. And there are 3 members in home. There are child, father, and the mother. So I'll just briefly tell you that it's a 7-year-old child, and he's well need-based speech. I would say he is active with good receptive skills, and he has a good sitting tolerance of 1 hour. Important thing, 1 hour with the mother. But the teacher complains that he cannot sit more than 20 minutes. For 20 minutes, he will be sitting. He will finish his work somehow. He knows the work, but he will be just wrapping it up because he can't do more than that 20 minutes. And then he will run away. He will touch the cable wires. He will touch the projectors. He will touch the children. He will touch them, but not hit them. Important. He will touch them. He will push them, and then he will again playing with the same thing. Once that period is over, the teacher has to tell him strictly. Then he might do the work again. But the thing is that the mother doesn't have this point of view that such things are doing, the child does it at home. So what could be, and in the home there are 3 members, the only child, the father and mother. So what could be the possible scenarios in this case? So anyone wants to like to comment on this?
Yes, sir. Actually, my son is also on similar criteria what you have mentioned. I think the child needs more exploration, like outside play, to taking to different places, like that.
Exactly.
And my son also, he can able to sit in one-on-one for even 1 hour. But when it comes to classroom setting, it is very difficult for him.
Exactly.
The distraction is very more for him. So
Yes.
it might be attention seeking, but I'm not sure. That's also
Exactly. Your approach is absolutely right, and what you have thought is absolutely right. The thing is that the child is more of a seeking. Now he is not very much exposed to the environment. Probably here the child wants to explore with the environment. He wants to interact with the child. He wants to interact with the parents, or I mean the peers. But because we know that a child learns better when he's of the same age group. In the family, he's the only child, and only the father and mother is there. So when the child goes into the classroom, he wants to interact. He wants to get mingle with them. Now, because he is not that much verbal to maintain that communication or initiate that communication, but he can express his needs. He is can express he wants to go toilet or whatever his basic needs. But in order to communicate with the child, in order to make friends, he's not that much comfortable. So as a result of which, probably, and other thing is that he's having sensory in the thing, probably he's more of a tactile seeking. That is why he feels to touch. After that 20 minutes, probably that sensory overload gets to him, because when he's sitting in a class and he's doing some work, there is some background music may be coming, there may be noise of other children, definitely outside bells might be ringing, that might be disturbing him or giving him that sensory overload in the body. So what is required? A sensory break is required for the child. So probably after that 20 minutes of work, he needs that sensory break, which overshoots his brain as a sensory overload. So the best thing is, what we can advise the teacher is give him, so one thing is there, that is sure, that tactile seeking is there. That is why he always, after that 20 minutes, probably when he's writing for 20 minutes, he gets that extra sensory need which is required in his hands. Maybe that pain, or maybe that proprioceptive seeking, maybe that sensory tactile seeking, pressure, whatever we can say. As a result of that tactile seeking, he immediately rubs and touches the wires. Probably that touching that wire, cable wires, may be hard enough to provide that extra sensory tactile touch which is required. Or maybe that proprioceptive, when he push or maybe touch, he may get that proprioceptive need, extra sensory need, or the tactile need. So the thing is that basically the child is taking a sensory break in order to calm down his sensory overload which is happening in his body. So probably he's doing this as a compensatory mechanism to make his body relax. He's not a hyperactive child. He's not a notorious child, or is not that he's not able to understand the concept. It's just that he cannot take it more than that. Now, the thing why he is able to sit in the room with mother at one place, why? One thing is that what we call as the concept of generalization and specific. See, with the mother, he's teaching, he's being taught daily. So it is very specific for him. It is the same environment, same place, same table, same room. So the environment is same. But when he goes to the class, the teacher may be different. The children may be, the different sounds may be coming. The environment may not be same all the day in the class. Other thing is that the sounds which may be coming, the distraction might be there, which is hampering the child because he gets that sensory overload. Maybe not only in the form of sensory or proprioceptive, he may get that sensory overload even from the noise of other children, the bells which may be ringing. Some peon may enter in the room and ask teacher, whatever may be the thing. There may be so much things are happening in the school. So that might be disturbing him. So another thing might be happening. What is there? He may be afraid that the child, the teacher might ask him a question, and he may not be able to respond it fully verbally because, as we have mentioned, he's only just in a state of 3 to 4. So rather than waiting for the teacher to answer him the question, because he may feel a lack of confidence or he may feel inferiority complex, he may immediately rush up to escape that thing that the teacher might ask him that question. Probably that thing might have happened him previously in his history. As a result, he want to avoid that situation that may happen it again. So the thing is that there can be a lot of possible things which can happen in a child. Just if the child is not listening, he's running here and there, we cannot label him as an ADHD. The whole purpose of these things is we have to look into the real root cause, what thing is happening and in what scenario it is happening. So what could be the possible scenarios I mentioned? I mentioned all the things. It doesn't mean that all of these are present. Predominantly attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, that clearly indicates no, because it is happening only in a particular environment and it is happening only with a particular person. Predominantly hyperactivity deficient inattention disorder, no, because the child is very attentive at the home. He's giving a sitting tolerance of 1 hour. A child of 1 hour sitting tolerance on the spectrum child, it's a good. Attention deficit hyperactive disorder, no. Predominantly sensory processing, yes. It could be a sensory processing, as we have discussed. They are tactile, they may be proprioceptive. We don't know. They might be auditory processing issues also. The voice of other children or maybe the sounds may be disturbing him. We don't know. But in this thing, it appears to be unlikely of auditory. Sensory overload, yes, as we have discussed, that probably after that 20 minutes, the child requires that sensory break of 20 minutes to make his body calm down. Attention seeking, I don't think it's an attention seeking because he's not doing for a particular, towards a particular person. Tangible behavior, no, he's not doing, but fixations, yes. Stimming and fixation. Fixation is a general term. Stimming is a specific term. If we talk about medically, yes, fixations are there in the child. He's going and touching those wires again and again. He pushes. So rather than pushing, I would say that playing with that electric projector cables again and again is a fixation. Or in a medical term, I would say it is a stimming. Now, why is he doing that? Probably he might be playing with that. He may be touching them. He may be squeezing them. That stimming is basically, again, it's his sensory mechanism or a sensory break to overcome that sensory overload. And we know that stimming is, what is stimming? Stimming is basically a mechanism to compensate the excess sensory overload which happens in a body. So in fact, stimming is a good thing for the child because it makes him relax, it makes him calm down the sensory overload which happens in the body, either maybe due to different commands or maybe due to particular activity. Stimming becomes a problematic thing when it hampers his day-to-day routine activities, his learning, his academics. So that recently there was a webinar on stimming by Dr. Neha, that should stimming be stopped in every case, when it should be stopped or when it should be intervened. So the thing is, stimming should only be intervened when it is hampering his day-to-day routine activities, when he's hampering his learning, when he's hampering his academics. Otherwise, it's a mechanism for him to compensate and make him relax. Let him do that. It doesn't make. So in this child, nothing is hampering his academics. His academics is not being hampered. He's doing things, although he is doing little haphazardly, but he's doing that. His reception is good, and he's doing that only for 20 minutes. So let him do. So instead of that, playing with the wires, which doesn't appear to be socially acceptable in the classroom scenario, we should discuss with the teacher and tell him, give him some different textures of grains, pulses, or maybe pebbles, so that he plays with them for that 20 minutes. Or involve him with other children in a group activity which involves that sensory play with the tactile, maybe with grains, maybe with pebbles. He'll be very comfortable child. He'll be actually a very comfortable, and he may shine like anything, like any other child. So the purpose of this thing was to make you understand that it's not that something big is happening. We just have to look into the smaller aspects of hyperactivity, that what is the cause which is happening. So probably if we give him a daily break of see, after 20 minutes he gets exhausted. So rather than giving him 20 minutes, we give him a task for 15 minutes and then give him a break of 10 minutes with sensory activity. Probably he will be a good child and a calm and relaxed child. So this was another case scenario. Now, another case scenario, a 9-year-old fully verbal child. Now he's fully verbal. So there is no concept of speech based or that he's a fully verbal child, active in sports with good receptive skills, and is studying in a probably this second class is probably is mentioned wrong. So take it as he's studying in 4th class probably. So on the day of parent teacher meeting, teacher complains that he's always on a run. uh, he doesn't wait for his turn. He doesn't want to wait for his turn to speak. Always, if the question is asked to him, he will immediately respond to that. And in the prayer meeting, he often breaks lines and stand wherever he wants. So he doesn't follow the cue. He wants to break the line. He stands wherever he wants to say. And most of the times in oral exams, he answers wrongly, as he's so impulsive. When the teacher tells him strictly to wait and listen the question full, then he only responds correctly. So what happens, just probably what is the capital of this. So instead of listening to that full question, he will immediately respond to that answer impulsively. So he doesn't wait for that. He knows the answer, but most of the time he responds wrongly, because he doesn't have that, waiting period to wait for that, to listen that question full. And when the teacher tells him strictly wait and listen to the full question, then probably most of the times he responds well and he answers correctly. Now mother complains the similar behavior in home with her and other family members, and mother says he sleeps by 12 midnight and wakes up by 5 a.m. with no more sleep rest of the day. So I'll just briefly again tell you, that's a 9-year-old fully verbal child with good in sports with good receptive skills. He's studying in probably 4th, 5th standard. And on the day of his parents teacher meeting, teacher complained that he's always on a run. He doesn't wait for his turn. He's a mischief child. He's running here and there. And he knows most of the answers. Academics is good, but probably he scores poor because he's always on a run. He don't want to wait for his turn. He don't want to wait for the question to be answered. He just writes what he wants, and within 20 minutes he will finish off the paper haphazardly, because he just want to, for the heck of completing, he completes the task. So, and the mother complains that yes, mother is absolutely right, and he goes with the teacher that this similar behavior is also seen with him and with other family members, and his sleep is also disturbed. He sleeps by 12 midnight and wakes up by 5 a.m. Remember, he doesn't go for sleep most of the day. So what could be the possible scenarios in this? Hello? Hello?
I think it is ADHD, sir.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, ma'am, what you are telling?
ADHD.
Okay.
All possible conditions of ADHD, like
Okay.
impulsiveness, hyperness, standing here and there, no waiting,
Hmm.
and same behavior in house also. and the sleep disturbances are there.
Exactly. Okay. So any other parent wants to say something? Ma'am says it's an ADHD, and any other parent wants to deny this or wants to go with this or wants to put something other point of view.
That impulsivity factors are it more likely makes it look like ADHD only.
It looks like ADHD. Okay. So yes, possible ADHD is there. So the thing is that most important thing is age criteria. Uh, we'll be discussing on the criteria of ADHD, but the important criteria for this age criteria. A child cannot be labeled as an ADHD unless and until he is at the age of 4 years. So this criteria is met. Second criteria, most important, is hyperactivity, which might come in the form of impulsivity. Yes, it is there, which clearly mentions. And then inattention. Inattention is also there. That is, he doesn't wait. He wants to finish up the task. Hyperactivity, as he doesn't wait, he runs here and there. Another important thing which is there is this same scenario happens in a different environment also. So this is very, very important, which gives us a clue that yes, probably the child is an ADHD spectrum. So the mother says, yes, exactly the similar thing happens in the school, happens in the house. So it's not that the environment is making him change, or some people is making him change, or some sensory thing is happening, or some attention seeking thing is happening. No. So the scenario is different, the age criteria is also there, and inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity are also met. So yes, inattention component, hyperactive component, more than one component. So it is more of inattention hyperactive, or it is more of an hyperactive attention seeking. It is basically both. He's an hyperactive as well as an inattentive child. So it clearly fits into the diagnosis of ADHD. Now, it fits into the diagnosis of ADHD, but we cannot confirm that, because to confirm that, we have to do a scaling is there. But generally, 80% the child is in the ADHD spectrum. But to be on the documentation purpose and to make a legal diagnosis, we do have to do a scoring on the ADHD, which is done by, we know that corner rating scale is there. So yes, definitely. Other thing is that behavior is not restricted to a particular person. It is with the teacher, it is with the mother. Behavior is happening in more than one environment. It is happening at the home, it is happening at the school. An attention component is met, hyperactive component is met, age is met. So these are the 5 criteria which are required to make a diagnosis of an ADHD. So this fits into this child. Now, another another case scenario, a 7-year-old non-verbal child, a 7-year-old non-verbal child in moderate to severe autism spectrum is showing lot of behaviors. Mother complains to the doctor, he does the following behaviors throughout the day. Now, note the behaviors the child is doing. He's throwing things, he's hitting himself. Now, hitting himself is a self-injurious behavior. Taking creams and paste in the mouth, pulling hairs, screaming. He's always feel anxious. He gets irritated when somebody touches him or hugs him. Mother says all these behaviors appeared abruptly since last 2 months. And there are 4 members in the family, one younger child who is 4 years, one this child who is on the spectrum 7 years, and father and mother. And there is a maid who is working in the word is not there because of the image. There is a maid who is working there from morning to evening. Mother is doing the job from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Again, it's hide. Mother is doing the job from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. These behaviors were not there during the lockdown. So, though he is a non-verbal child, but he never showed such behaviors during the lockdown period. Now, maid was not there during the lockdown. She joined recently. She joined the work recently. So, maid has joined their house for work after the lockdown. Maid says the child never does such behaviors with him. And because the mother is on the job, she's doing the job from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Probably he is maybe doing the job or he's doing from work from home, but he's not with the child during that period. So the maid's point of view is that the child doesn't do such behaviors with her, and he's a very happy and good child. Probably then the mother feels, yes, probably the maid is right, and she feels that the child is doing attention seeking behavior and he misses her a lot. So she decides to quit the job. So I'll just show you the previous slide so that you can go through it. that what are the things which is happening in this child. The 7-year-old non-verbal, he's in the spectrum, he's in the moderate to severe spectrum, and the mother is very, he's very tense because of the behaviors of the child. So he goes to the doctor and explains his behaviors. He's throwing most of the things, he's hitting himself, he's taking almost all things like creams and paste, he's pulling hairs, he's screaming, he's anxious for everything, he gets irritated when somebody touches him or hugs him. And mother point of view is that he was absolutely fine, but during the last 2 months all these behaviors came. There are 4 members, mother is doing the job from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. These behaviors happened during the lockdown, though he is a non-verbal child. Sorry, these behaviors were not there during the lockdown. Important thing, behaviors were not there during the lockdown. So though he's a non-verbal child, but he never showed such behaviors during the lockdown period. Maid has joined after the lockdown, and maid says that no, there are no such behaviors with her, and he's a very quiet and happy child. So probably the mother feels, yes, he's basically, because during the lockdown the mother was with her, there was no work, nothing. So mother feels, yes, probably he's an attention seeking and he misses her a lot, so she decides to quit the job. So what are the possible scenarios? What Yes, anyone can put up their views.
Basically attention seeking, sir.
Okay.
I think the diet needs to be checked.
Diet needs to be checked. How can we comment on the diet, because I have not mentioned anything related to the diet.
Diet in the sense.
We are assuming he's on a GFCF diet.
Okay.
We are assuming he's on a GFCF diet because I have not mentioned anything related to that. So I'm, for your purpose, to make more clarify thing, he's on a GFCF diet, or probably I would say he's on a diet which is not hampering his behaviors, or GFCF.
Okay. We might check his vitamin and mineral levels, might be.
If his vitamin levels are low, then why is he doing not with in front of the maid? That vitamin levels or B12 level doesn't have to do anything with the maid or the child or the person or anything. Why is the child is doing more with the mother probably?
I think if I am in that case, I might install a camera and check whether the maid, whatever the maid claimed, is true or not.
Yes, one thing is absolutely right. Very true. One thing is absolutely favoring this. We have to check the background, and that what the mother is telling, what the maid is telling, is actually true or not. Other thing.
So there can be sensory issues like throwing, mouthing, hair pulling.
That is absolutely fine. But the thing is that again, we are taking the maid point of view also, that she's telling she doesn't do such things at home. She doesn't do such things with the child. And another thing is that important thing could be sensory issues. We can assume that the maid what is telling is absolutely wrong, or she's just misguiding the mother. But the thing is that these things happened only during the last 2 months. And another important and interesting thing is that during the lockdown, that thing never happened. When the child was totally locked down in the home, the mother was there, everybody was there, and they were not able to do any therapies. Remember, he is on a severe spectrum, and he was not doing any therapies, anything. Probably the mother was doing the activities with her. But why those things never came during that period? Probably they might be there, but why it has abruptly increased during this last 2 months? And another thing is that some correlation is also being related, that the maid has also joined recently. So we'll discuss. So probably one thing, yes, definitely, as one of the parent is told, that something is not true in the statement of the maid, what she's telling. So now this was the child. This child actually came to us for the consultation, and these were the actual same complaints which the mother told to us. So when we went into the history on more details, we get to know that it was a case of child abuse. See how annoying and how it's frustrating for the parents that such things can also happen. So this I have deliberately kept this case, because just to make sure that we cannot, as one of the parent has rightly told, that we cannot blindly depend upon everybody. So there were two things which were happening very, which were not fitting. One thing is that 7 year is fine, he's a non-verbal, is moderate to severe. So one thing is clear, that the child cannot express his needs, he cannot tell what is happening with him. So probably why the child was comfortable with the maid, probably the maid might be scolding him, or he might be beating him, so that he doesn't make any nonsense, he doesn't do any things, like he would be doing these things with her also, throwing things, hitting, or anything. Probably that might be having some sensory issues, but he might not be doing those things, or probably he may not be expressed. The maid might be frustrated, that what is this child, I'm not able to understand, I cannot handle him. So probably he might be scolding him, he might be hitting him, or he might be giving him some sleeping medicine, whatever, so that the child may go for a sleep. Now when the mother comes, he is in his own environment, he is more comfortable, and he is more protective. So that use that fear basically is coming out. Now why does he feels very irritated when somebody touches him? Probably that touch of the maid may not like him. So probably if anybody else touches him, he may feels very offended, he may feel that insecurity which is happening to him, because he cannot express. Probably the mother might have asked him a lot of times, but because I have mentioned he's in a moderate to severe non-verbal child, so we cannot expect that how the things is happening. And another thing is telling, the maid is telling that he is very happy child. Probably the happy is because he cannot do things, because he's afraid that he might get scolding, and he cannot express those things what is happening to the mother. So probably the best thing for him, that he will keep as a silent and a good child. And probably that silence and good was not his happiness or his a good behavior, it was his fear that was basically hiding him in that 3 to 4 hours. And when that mother comes, he starts throwing those things, because he's not angry, he's basically that fear which is coming out, and making him that try to understand what is happening with me. Probably by doing throwing those things and paste and everything, he's want to make the mother, yes, one thing is that want to get that attention of the mother towards him, that I'm not happy, something is happening with me, please look into the matter. So, and interestingly, what happened, that we discussed that thing with the parents, and interestingly what that happened, probably unluckily there were no cameras and in the home. So what they did, they removed the maid, and after that, believe me, within 2 to 3 months the child was very much comfortable, though those features of autism, sensory issues were there. That is that's a core and parcel of spectrum. But those things which were happening, touching and hugging, he's not liking, he's uncomfortable, he's throwing things, he's not listening, he's always irritated, those things settle to more than 50%. So the idea of this is not that every maid or every servant or housemaid is like that. The thing is that we cannot jump on a conclusion that this is happening with the child, unless and until we look into each and every aspect of the thing which is happening around our kids. So this was one thing. I have tried to take out different and possible things which we have come across and we have discussed. So probably this was a very shocking, case scenario which happened with us. So this also gave us an alarming that yes, anything can happen. So we have to be very, vigilant before approaching, vigilant not towards the persons, but vigilant before approaching to some diagnose. Now, another good thing case is parents complain to a doctor that their 3-year-old child is very hyperactive and naughty. He doesn't wait to sit at one place in the house, and he throws a lot of tantrums, and if his demand is not met. So he's a 3-year-old child, very naughty, doesn't want to sit at one place in the house. He throws a lot of tantrums, and if his demands are not met, he speaks only papa. He speaks only papa. So he's a 3-year-old child, he speaks only papa, but his receptive skills are good. He can do imitations. His identification is fine as per the parents compared to his peer age group. So the thing which is worry is his expressive speech is poor. Presently, uh, he can only do scribbling. So writing is also late. He can do only scribbling. Mother says he has frequent cough and cold, and since the age of 1 year. So sleeping is a big issue. He's having frequent cough and cold. He has never had a sound sleep. So he feels comfortable when we take him on his shoulders, means on his so when the mother takes him and makes him sleep like this on the shoulder, he's comfortable. But when we make them lie down on the bed, he's not comfortable. He has a big sleeping issue, running frequent cough and cold since last 1 year, since the age of 1 year. And academic wise, he's lacking because, as we have seen, he's only says Papa. His writing is also delayed. He's only scribbling. So, but otherwise, his receptive is good. And academic wise, he's lacking compared to the peers. As I've told, his school complained that he doesn't pay attention in the class. So his school teacher complained that he doesn't pay attention in the class. He doesn't pay attention in the class, always looks here and there. He cannot express his demands. As I mentioned, he only says Papa. And presently, he is not, presently he is potty trained. He is potty trained, but recognizes all his family members and enjoys his company with the parents and sisters. So he recognizes all his family members and enjoys the company with sisters and other family members. So he's socialized. He, as per the 3 years age, he is socializing and he recognizes all the family members. So what could be the possible scenarios? So hello.
The sensory issues.
Hello. Hello.
This is autism with sensory issues.
Yes. Any other parent?
Sir, I think because of the health issues, as well as it is written that he is unable to sleep well, but when taken on the shoulder, that means that because of chest congestion, he is not really feeling so good. And maybe the father is taking care and taking him on his shoulder, and while mother is doing other work, so maybe because of that he feels more comfortable. And another is because he is not like he doesn't speak like not is there, so his speech is not there. So he's feeling very comfortable within the family member because he feels that they understand him more than when he goes to school and where he's unable to express himself there.
Yes,
So
yes, probably. So you feel that it is more related to a medical condition in the form of chest, probably chest congestion.
yeah, like asthma, yeah, the chest congestion. So
Exactly. Okay. So that's a good thought. Thank you, ma'am. And any other parent who wants to put some comment on this or can put up the inputs?
Sleep disorder is a major problem.
Maybe he's not able to communicate. That is the reason he is very frustrated, irritated. Usually, a 3-year-old child communicates very well.
Yes.
And above all, he has problems, health issues also. Maybe that is the reason why he is not paying attention in the class because, health issues and then communication issues.
Yes.
Maybe even if he communicates very less also, maybe at home they are giving him whatever he wants, but that doesn't happen in the school.
Exactly.
So he's not enjoying school.
Yes. So the thing is that one thing is very clear that some medical issue is there with the child, which is basically affecting his sleep. And because as the child is having frequent cough and cold, so something is there which is hampering, probably something is there which is also affecting his speech also. So let's see what the thing, and because of the frequent cough and cold, he is getting more comfortable when the child is taken onto the shoulder. When it is lies down on the bed, he's not comfortable because he might be getting breathing issues. He may not be comfortable. As one of the parent has told, he might be having maybe asthmatic problems or any other things. So yes. So let's see what could be the, let's see what could be the possible thing in this child. So could it be a late talker? Could it be could it be a expressive speech delay? Could it be a receptive and expressive speech delay? Could it be a speech or a language delay? Could it be an adenoid hypertrophy? Could it be an behavioral problem, tantrums, or ADHD?
Adenoid hypertrophy.
Yes. So the yes, exactly. So the parent has one of the parent has rightly picked up this answer. It's adenoid hypertrophy. See, late talker, it appears to be unlikely. Could be a part of late talker, but as we have highlighted that he's more of a he's having frequent cough and cold, and he's more comfortable in sleeping when they are made to lie on the shoulder. Expressive speech delay, yes, definitely expressive speech delay is there, but we are more focusing that what is the cause of that expressive speech delay. Expressive speech delay itself is not a diagnosis, so we have to look into that. But yes, expressive speech delay is there in the child. Receptive and expressive speech delay, no. Receptive is absolutely fine. Language delay as such we cannot comment, but as per the history it appears that language is fine for the child. But yes, development is delayed definitely in the terms of gross motor, in the terms of fine motor, because his writing is delayed. Behavioral problems, yes, definitely some behavioral problems are there, tantrums, but that might be aggravated because of the behavioral medical issues, maybe frequent cough and cold, and that any child can get aggravated. He might get tantrums, he may show the tantrums. So yes, tantrums, behavioral problems are there, but it's more of a tantrums rather than a behavioral issue. ADHD definitely not. So yes, what we did, so the doctor advised for the x-ray neck, and it was case of severe grade 3 hypertrophy, adenoids hypertrophy. So child was operated, and within 3 months of discharge, after 3 months of discharge, the child became better, his behavior settled and sleep sound. So basically what happened, because of those adenoids hypertrophy, the child was not able to take a comfortable sleep. When we lie down, we normally take breathe through the mouth, we take breathe through the nose. So during sleeping, we became breathers to the nose. We don't open our mouth and sleep. When we open our mouth and sleep, that means we are snoring, or what we call kharatelena. That happens because our nostrils get blocked, and that generally happens when there is a severe case of adenoid hypertrophy. So because of this, so he was neither an ADHD child, he was not a spectrum child, he was not a, I mean, ADHD or spectrum or express speech delay child. It was just a case of adenoid hypertrophy. And when the child was, and why he was writing was delayed, probably his writing was delayed because there was not much speech. There was not much speech. He was not very much interactive in the class. He was looking here and there. And so as a result, probably he was little behind compared to the peer age group. But after that 3 months, he gradually picked up the speech. His behaviors also settled down, and most importantly, his sleep also became sound. So this was a case of adenoid hypertrophy. So now these were the possible case scenarios which we have discussed. Now coming to a true, so from all these 5 case scenarios, 5 to 6, what we have discussed, comes to a conclusion that hyperactivity or inattention, it may be only hyperactivity, it may be only inattention, or it may be hyperactivity plus inattention. It can be due to sensory issues, which can be proprioceptive, which can be tactile, which can be vestibular, which can be sensory, like sensory overload, as we have discussed, meltdowns. It can be due to behavioral problems. So attention seeking may be there, it may be tangible behavior, it may be escape and avoidance. Then it can be inattention, it may be in the form of auditory processing, it may be poor expressive and receptive speech, or it can be in the form of what we can say medical issues, as this circle is not clear, oval shape because of the screen. So it can be due to the medical issues like adenoid hypertrophies, or it can be due to tonsillitis, or it can be gut issues. I have not taken into the gut issues here. So the purpose of this slide is that hyperactivity and attention can be happen due to a lot of all these issues. So first and foremost, we have to resolve these issues. If these issues have been ruled out, then we can go in diagnosis of an ADHD. Yes, this child is a true ADHD child, which actually differentiates a true ADHD child from a false or a pseudo hyperactive, pseudo ADHD, or what we call as a hyperactive child. So every hyperactive child cannot be labeled as an ADHD. Now, another important thing is how generally we happens. This is a chart to make you understand, to differentiate between an ADHD child and an APD. APD means auditory processing disorder. So ADHD, we know the child is inattentive, but the child may be inattentive in the difficult, if there is, he's not able to understand the things in the background of the music, as we have discussed in one of the things. So probably he's having an APD, that is auditory processing. That is why he's not able to pay attention, because he gets easily distracted. So we might label it wrongly as an ADHD child. Distracted or inattentive, he may not be able to follow the instructions. He may be looking, he may be just immediately distracted. So we wrongly label the child as an ADHD. Hyperactive, poor listening skills, maybe because of background music, maybe because of something else which is going on, or maybe some other family members may be talking. Important thing in auditory processing is the child is not able to perceive the human voice in the background of any other noise. So this is one of the most important uh, differential diagnosis of an ADHD, because this generally happens that बच्चा स्कूल में नहीं पढ़ रहा, बच्चा स्कूल में इधर उधर डिस्ट्रैक्ट हो जाता है, लेकिन घर पे वो सब काम करता है. So we wrongly labels it as an ADHD कि स्कूल में इधर उधर भाग रहा है, उधर भाग रहा है, मदर की बात नहीं, टीचर की बात नहीं सुन रहे हैं, और एकेडमिक्स में पुअर है. But we forget about the fact that in a school it's a total different scenario. There are so many children, there are so many sounds are coming, there is so much distraction. So probably there might be something auditory processing disorder may be hampering the academics of the child in association with some other sensory aspects. But here in this important thing is, we cannot label a child just ADHD. We have to rule out an APD in a child which is affecting his learning in a particular environment. So then another thing is, what are temper tantrums? Now, temper tantrums are very unpleasant and disruptive behaviors. They is basically an emotional outburst. Now, it happens in any child. It happens in almost every child in the toddler age group, and it is a normal development of every child. Then what is the problem, that why those tantrums? What is the difference between then tantrums and meltdowns? Because initially meltdowns also begin as tantrums, but ultimately they get converted into meltdowns. So what is the difference between the tantrums and meltdowns? See, tantrums, important thing is that tantrums can also happen in an ASD kid. It doesn't mean that every tantrum in an ASD kid will be a meltdown. And it doesn't mean that a child who is on the spectrum will always show meltdowns. So meltdowns only do happen when there are high sensory issues. And we know that all ASD kids, they do have SPDs, they do have sensory processing issues. So definitely they'll be have, but depending upon the severity of those, they may go into a meltdown, or they may just stop at the stage of tantrums rather than going into a further stage of sensory meltdown. So how to differentiate between the two things? Important one thing is there, when tantrums happen. Tantrums generally happens when the child wants something and which his demand or need is not being met. And when that thing is given to the child, he will settle down, he will become a comfortable child. But in case of a meltdown, when you give that tangible thing or a thing which he wants, that will not settle down. That will continue to happen because it has already shoot up his sensory overload. So it cannot be calmed down by just giving him that tangible thing or the thing which is demands. So this is one of the most important thing which differentiates from a tantrum to a sensory meltdown. We generally see बच्चा रो रहा है, बहुत शैतानी कर रहा है, उसको एक चॉकलेट दे दी, वो चुप हो गया. But if you actually observe a meltdown child, even if you give him a chocolate, he will not be bothered. He will keep crying for 1 to 2 hours unless and until his sensory overload gets settles down. So it's basically happening. I would say it's basically more of a, stimming. The stimming has overcrossed him and it has become so much overload that it comes out to be in the form of a meltdown. So what to do when tantrums happen? Important thing, generally they are more of an attention seeking, as we know, because they want that thing, and if that thing is not being met, they will show. The best thing, you try to ignore that and always follow in a gentle manner. Never say no. Give them some alternative, or tell them, okay, first you finish this work, then we will get it to you, then you will get that thing. So we cannot always shout at the child. We have to approach through a gentle, polite and a decent and firm manner. So, but thing is that tantrums are normal. It happens in every child during a normal developmental stage in the toddlers, but it might vary from the severity. But meltdowns never happen in all kids. Meltdowns only happen in kids who are on the spectrum or with high sensory processing. So prevention, I have told you how. Now important thing is meltdown. So how to differentiate from a tantrum meltdown? As I have told you, they won't settle down. Initially it will become as a tantrum and ultimately it will go down in a meltdown. Now, in the meltdown, a meltdown is an intense response to overwhelming situation. Overwhelming situation means, for example, I'll give you an example. A child with a spectrum and has a high sensory issues, he's more of a visual seeking, and he gets distracted easily with bright lights, or with he may be an auditory processing. He gets easily distracted. He's not able to listen to the loud noise. So he's going to a mall with the father or the parents, and there he sees a chocolate, and the mall is full of crowd. There are a lot of sounds are coming, everything. And he sees a chocolate. He says chocolate. He points towards that chocolate. Just he says chocolate. So mother knows he wants chocolate. Mother says, no, you have already taken 2 chocolates yesterday, so I won't give it. So he starts screaming. He starts screaming, and he starts screaming. He starts pulling the hairs, and ultimately he get down. I request parent to kindly
না আমার কিছু ভাবিনি।
Kindly mute yourself, please. Kindly mute yourself. Yeah. So he starts screaming and then he starts rolling on the floor, and the mother gives him the chocolate. So probably thinking that the child will settle down. So even after taking the chocolate, he starts screaming. He's rolling over there. He's not able to handle. And after say probably 30 minutes or so, the mother takes him to the calm environment, hugs him, and talks to him politely. Initially, she was shouting, she was screaming, "No, you won't get it. Now you have got the chocolate. Why are you screaming?" So probably from that tantrum stage, the child has gone to a meltdown. And what was the cause of that meltdown? Probably the cause of the meltdown was not the chocolate. The cause of the tantrum was the chocolate, but because of the added situations, or what we call as a confounding factors, like overcrowding, too much noise, or so much sounds which are coming, that the child was not able to, was not able to hold that thing in his brain. So that sensory overload happened to him, and moreover that tantrum which was happening, it made the sensory meltdown more worse. So this is the thing. So here the approach is little different from the tantrum. In the meltdown, you just have to wait for the child. Important things are there, that in the, just a minute please. My slide is stuck. Yeah. So the important thing is that in the stages of meltdown, you have two important stages. One is called as a rumbling stage, second is called the rage stage, and the third is recovery. So rumbling stage, what happens? I don't know parents have noticed or not, but generally if the child is having a lot of meltdowns, generally what happens, initially there will be a rumbling stage where the child will show some specific behaviors of nail biting. Suppose you have asked, give him some, oh, he's gone in a mall. Let's take an example of a mall. He's gone in a mall and there are a lot of crowd. He's not comfortable. So he may be showing nail biting. He may be tensing. He may be doing something discomfort. That indicate that some discomfort is happening in this stage. Now this is a rumbling stage. Now this is the stage where we can take an effective strategic intervention to make the child before it goes into the further stage. Now during this stage, if we look at the child, we'll see he's little more tense. It's just like he's losing the confidence. For example, if we are on a stage and we are giving some lecture to 200 people for the first time, or we are giving a Viva voice for our 10th or 12th board, we don't know the answer. We may be nail biting, we may be fidgeting our body, or we may be tensing, we may be rolling our hairs, we may be showing some sort of stimming. So this is basically what is called as a rumbling state, where some features of stimming starts appearing. So stimming, I would say it's a beginning of the meltdown. So here the child will start showing stimming, and ultimately if he crosses that stage, he goes into the rage stage. Now rage stage is the one which cannot be reversed. Here the child will continue shout, he will screaming, he will be head banging, he will be biting, he will be doing self-injurious behavior, he may be throwing things, he may be rolling on the bed, he may be showing all sorts of withdrawal. You might hug him, you might kiss him, you might talk to him politely, he will not listen. Now this rage stage, unless and until once it is not completed, you cannot stop the child. Now important thing is that the best thing, once the child goes into the rage stage, never stop the child. Just let him cry, let him cry, and let his anger and that sensory meltdown, let it happen. And that generally goes for a period of 20 or maybe 15 or maybe 30 minutes, but generally goes to a period of 25 to 30 minutes. Once that stage is over, then you intervene. Never intervene in the child in the stage of rage, because it will be of no use. The child will not respond. So go into this stage once the child crosses this stage, and give him a gentle hug, talk to him politely, and then give him a sense of security. That is what we call as the recovery stage. So important thing is, we always intervene the child when he goes into the stage of rumbling. Once he crosses that, we cannot intervene the child. Now hyperactivity, a thing is that hyperactivity generally presents in children. We know that there is a lot of excessive talking, fidgeting, squirrel in the seats, school,
or maybe wandering here and there, not responding to parents. He's running here and there in the schools. And this hyperactivity generally makes a matter of concern for the parents. And then we start thinking, is the child is an ADHD or not? Or we may start worrying and we may go to a clinical psychologist or developmental pediatrician thinking that the child is ADHD. So the important is hyperactivity is the first concern that is noted by the parents and teachers that probably a child is an ADHD. So the take home message is every hyperactive child is not an ADHD, but every ADHD child is an hyperactive. So parents should be concerned when the child is overactive. The important thing is also is that in an ADHD child, the hyperactivity will be hampering his activities in majority of the cases, academic learning, his understanding, his receptive, but not in a case of a hyperactive, a true hyperactive child or a notorious child. He might be doing his work, he might be listening, but that is not hampering his academics, learning, and different things. Now, if we go about the diagnostic criteria, this is the latest diagnostic criteria just to mention, as we have discussed most of the things. As per the DSM-5 criteria for ADHD, a child has to be labeled on ADHD on the basis of symptoms over the last 6 months. It has two important parameters, inattention and hyperactivity. So for inattention, there are different scenarios that the child should meet most of these symptoms of inattention over the period of last 6 months. It doesn't mean that the child is inattentive or hyperactive in one particular day and not today. So it should be a gradual period of at least the last 6 months. So inattention, as we have discussed, he's not listening and he's not responding to parents, or he's troubling doing meticulous works. He's not able to do activities. He's fidgeting, or he's not able to finish the work. He's finished it so fast that he is doing a lot of things, mistakes. He's doing a lot of things. He's not able to keep the pencils for tasks or activities appropriately. He wants, and so suppose he wants to keep his shoes in his rack. He may not be able to keep that. He's not inattentive. He's looking here and there. So probably he might put it in a wrong rack. So these are some of the practical things for inattention. Now, then another thing that we call as inattentive, this is a part 1 criteria. Second is what we call as hyperactivity. Now, hyperactivity is the part B criteria, which generally appears in the form of impulsivity. As we have told that the child may not listen, he may impulsively respond to the command. Whether he even if he knows the answer, he might respond it wrong. He may be excessively running here and there. He may not be wait for his turn. He may immediately blur out with an answer. So he may be fidgeting continuously. So these are the features of hyperactivity. So the important thing is that another important thing that there must be a clear evidence of clinically significant impairment in his social, academic, and this. So along with this, the important thing is that these symptoms of inattention and hyperactivity should be significant enough to hamper his academics, learning, academic and social activities. Other thing, it should be in a child where these activities are happening in more than one environment. As we have discussed, it should be happen at the home, or it may be a school, or it may be any of the different environment. It should not be restricted to a particular environment. Other important thing is age criteria, because before the age of 4 years, you cannot label a child as an ADHD, because before the age of 4 years, he may be a notorious child, or if the child is on the spectrum, there might be a lot of issues which might be affecting the child, his speech, his sensory issues, his expressive, his behaviors in the form of frustration because he's not able to express, might be gut issues. So those are the different things which we have to work on. Now, so based on these criteria, if we met the criteria of both hyperactivity and attention, then we label a child as a combined bite, that is hyperactive and impulsive, hyperactive and inattentive. If inattentive criteria are met rather than hyperactive, we call it as a predominantly inattentive type. And if hyperactive criteria are met predominantly rather than attentive, we call it as an hyperactive predominant ADHD. So now, so this is the summary of the guidelines for the ADHD. Now, this is very important. Just I have taken a crux of all the guidelines which has been given by American Academy of Pediatrics. These are the evidence-based practices which we should follow. Now, in a child who is less than 6 years, there are three different age groups: less than 6 years, more than 6 years, between 6 to 12, and more than 12 years. So less than 6 years, important thing is that this is once a child is labeled as an ADHD. Now, these three criteria are the child is labeled as an ADHD through a proper diagnosis and proper evaluation. Now, what to do? How to approach an ADHD child? This is basically what. So in a child who is less than 6 years, there is no role of medications. There is no role of medication, and the grade is A. Grade A level of evidence means it is a strong evidence. So here we have to work on the behavioral sensory communication to rule out the medical issues. So why, if a child is an ADHD child, but he's less than 6 years, we have to initially work on his sensory, because we are probably he might be on the spectrum. So we have to work, assuming that the child is on the spectrum along with the ADHD. So we have to initially work on the behavioral sensory communication part, because he may not be expressive enough, and rule out the medical issues important, like as we have discussed, adenoid hypertrophy. It may be tonsillitis, it may be gut issues, he may be constipation, or it may be different medical issues, it may be asthmatic. So even these medical symptoms or conditions can make the child as an labeled as an ADHD. So work on this. So there is no role of medications, because they, as we know that there are a lot of side effects of these. So we have to benefit the risk between, we have to always, measure the benefits versus harmful effects of the drugs. So if the child is between 6 to 12 years, now this is very critical. 6 to 12 years is a very, complex situation, whether we should go for medicines, whether we should not go for medicines. So the first step is always work on the behavioral and sensory and communication management. That is the main backbone of our understanding language and communication. If this step fails, even after working for 6 months on behavioral, sensory and communication, we fail, then we go to the step 2. Step 2 is where we start working on the CNS stimulants, provided we continue with the behavioral therapy. Now, CNS stimulants, there are basically two different types of medication. Non-CNS stimulants like atomoxetine, most common, and methylphenidate, as we most commonly use. So CNS stimulants are the most commonly recommended, and they are good, provided if the child is between 6 to 12 years and we have failed through behavioral therapy and sensory, if the child is not able to settle down. Then we go for the low doses of CNS stimulant like methylphenidate along with behavioral therapy. So this is grade 1 evidence. That means it has a very good. But grade B says if you go only for CNS stimulants like methylphenidate, but you do not go behavioral therapy, then it is grade B. Grade B means it is not conclusive, or it is weak evidence. So the important thing is any child between the age of 6 to 12 years continue with behavioral therapy along with low dose of CNS stimulants. Just don't depend upon the medications. Now, second role of non-CNS stimulants like atomoxetine, clonidine, and guanifidine, it is zero. There is no role of non-CNS stimulants. So don't go for atomoxetine, clonidine, guanifacine as only for the medications. If we want to try, we can try for methylphenidate, but important, work along with the behavioral therapy. Now, more than 12 years, again, more than 12 years, step 1, we have to, there is no role of behavioral therapy alone. We have to work with the CNS stimulants plus behavioral therapy, because more than a 12-year-old child, it's very difficult to manage through behavioral therapy alone. So we have to work with the CNS stimulants, we have to work with behavioral therapy. Then non-CNS stimulants can be given at a try, but again, the evidence is grade B. That means it is little, I would say, inconclusive. But the best is CNS stimulants, because these are the most studied, like methylphenidate, atomoxetine, which is the most commonly used non-CNS stimulants. But sometimes we have seen that clonidine and guanifacine is also given. But non-CNS stimulants with behavioral therapy is grade B. Now, if you go for behavioral therapy alone, as I've told you, because it is not successful for a child who is more than 12 years, so it is poor evidence. Role of medications only, again, it's a poor evidence. So this is the crux and the, the summary of all the approach for an ADHD child between the different age scenarios. And these are the different medications which we have used. Now, CNS stimulants, these are the FDA approved, all CNS stimulants like Adderall, these are the brand names most commonly which we use. Methylphenidate, Ritalin, which we use. Non-CNS stimulant, but non-CNS stimulants have only role when it is more than the age of 12 years. Otherwise, there is not much role. Atomoxetine is the only FDA approved, which is that is Strattera, which is most commonly used. Other than this, clonidine, guanifacine, imipramine, which is an anticyclic, tricyclic antidepressants, they are not recommended. Though we try offline, off chart we try, but it is not recommended. Only recommended is FDA. That is atomoxetine. And FDA approved CNS stimulants are, most of these are all approved. Ritalin or amphetamine, dextromethorphan, methylphenidate. But the important thing is, what is most important is the side effects. Now the list is enormous. The list is endless, but I have just mentioned the important ones. So always important thing is we also always have to, always taken into account the risk versus the benefits. And accordingly, we have to take a call on the medicines. And most of these medicines, again, they are dependent. Withdrawal symptoms are very much there. So it's a very tricky situation that should we start on the medications or not. And once we start, then the threshold level keeps on increasing. So we have to gradually keep on building the levels and the doses of the drugs. So the take home message is that never rush into to label a child as an ADHD. Always look into the prior aspects responsible for hyperactivity or inattention of the child. Medication should be considered in a child only above 6 years of age, confirmed with diagnosis of ADHD should be considered. It is not that we have to give. Behavioral sensory communication management is the key for any child below 6 years of age with hyperactivity or inattention. So a child cannot be diagnosed as an ADHD before the age of 4 years, because most of our kids who are in the age of in the spectrum in the category of 2 to 4 years with spectrum, who are on the spectrum, do have a lot of attention and hyperactivity issues, but we cannot label them as an ADHD. So for those purposes, we have to work initially on the background of behavioral sensory and communication. So this was our brief about the ADHD, and I made it a little different presentation today, more of a practical case scenarios, so that becomes very interesting for everybody and we are able to learn more with each other. Hope I would make it an interesting webinar for all of us. So now I'll quickly go on to the questions because not much time is left for us. So I'll just rush up with the questions, one or two, and then we can, if any one of the parents have left any queries or anything, they can get in touch through us through different modes. So yes.
Hello, doctor. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, just I want to know this impulsive behavior. Is it a lifelong condition under ADHD?
See, the thing is that
lack of self-control.
See, the thing is that generally ADHD child, once they reach the age of adolescence, probably say I would say 15 to 16 years or in the mid adolescence, the thing is that inattention part, the inattention part generally settles down. I mean, hyperactivity part generally settles down, but inattention part doesn't settle down. Hyperactivity means they'll be running here and there, they won't be listening, they'll be throwing things. That part will settle down. But inattention, that is doing some minor things, keeping their things in a proper area, that inattention part still lacks there. But somehow they are able to manage the hyperactivity part. As they grow, they are adapted to the environment. But inattention part still lacks there. To some extent, it will be resolved, but not to a complete extent.
Okay, thank you, doctor.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, doctor.
Yeah.
Will sports definitely help these children?
Definitely.
Can that be?
Yes,
okay,
definitely.
Can that be taken like instead of academics, can we focus on sports, something like that?
See, definitely the thing is that if I talk about in a very simple language, they have a lot of energy and we have to just channelize the energy in the right direction. So the best thing for that is, yes, vigorous sports activities like basketball, where they have to put a lot of efforts and where their sensory stimulation is also there. So see, definitely in ADHD, definitely sensory part must be also there, which is affecting those kids. So yes, sports is a very good alternative in form of basketball, in form of sports like skating, and in form of swimming. So definitely, we can definitely take it as a sports as an alternative option or a career option. In fact, it's not that we have to go into academics only.
What's the difference between the ADHD child and the autistic child? I mean, who is having a mild autism level? What is the difference? How can we get
See, for autism to differentiate, you have to go for the CAS test or ESA test or ADOS test. That and similarly for ADHD, we go for a corner rating scale. So there are different standard scales which have been there. So through that, we can confirm the diagnosis.
Yes, my son is diagnosed with the mild autism, but I mean, he's very good in the academic and all. He's 6 years now. So is there are chances of coming out of this with the help of medication and all?
See, the thing is that there are, first of all,
inattentive.
See, if he's in the mild spectrum,
he is inattentive. Yes.
See, if he's in a mild spectrum and if he's inattentive in the class, so I would suggest to look into the causes why he's inattentive in the class, as we have discussed. See, just starting on the medications, I won't suggest initially. Just initially get in touch with the behavioral therapist or get in touch with your OT and discuss what definitely there might be some sensory issues which might be affecting the child. They might be APD issues, or they might be, if the child is fully verbal, there might be those sensory issues might be affecting, or if he's not fully verbal, they might be receptive skills which might be affecting. And if Even after resolving those issues, if it is not there, then the thing is that you can give it a try on medication along with the behavioral therapy. But if truly speaking, whether the behavioral medications will make the child out of that, that is absolutely, I won't suggest the right answer is yes, because all these changes will be as long as the child is on medication. Once you stop it, again those withdrawal symptoms will appear, and we cannot go on this medication lifelong, as we have seen that risks are very high with these medication in the form of side effects. Okay.
Okay, sir. Sir, and what is the difference in the language delay and the speech delay?
See, language, see, I'm not the right person to tell you this, but the thing is that in just a simple way, I would say speech language means the way the child is able to express his need in relation to context. For example, if somebody asks us, when does the moon appear in the day? And when does the moon appear? He blindly answers something, yellow, white, although he knows that, but he's not able to correlate that moon in relation to the context which is being asked. He might be knowing moon comes in night. He might be knowing moon is round in shape. It is white in color. But when the question is asked to him in context to a particular language, for example, when does the moon, then he is not able to answer. He may say something. It is round in color. It is white in color. So that what we call as language delay. That the child is not able to say a speech in context to a proper language or in a context to a proper practical scenario which is being asked to him. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think we'll be closing up this session now. And I think it was...
a last question.
Yes, yes,
last
ma'am.
question.
Yes, yes, ma'am, please.
So, do you diagnose a child with autism to clarify whether he's having ADHD or not?
Sorry, do you diagnose a child with autism?
To confirm if he's having ADHD or not.
Yes, 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 ma'am. We have scales, as I've told you. We do CAR scale for autism, and we do standard scales. Corner rating scale is there, which we confirm the diagnosis of ADHD. It's again a parent questionnaire. It will be looking into the activities of the child, and also through the parent interview, we can make a diagnosis. So these are some of the standard scales, and we do make a diagnosis through those things.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. So thank you, parents, and thank you everybody for attending this webinar. And if any of the questions which are left, or if you want to get connected with us, you can get connected through these different modes. Thank you. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful evening. Take care. Stay healthy, stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.